All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all so much for coming over now. I'm sure most of you know that Paul Reubens, aka Peewee Herman, passed away. A lot of people had sent me messages letting me know, and I didn't make a video on it because I honestly was waiting for this channel, the Grunge channel, to do a video, because a lot of times they'll, have a lot of information and things that I didn't know about. I don't know too much about him. Like, I know he had that one incident or whatever. But other than that, I really don't know too much about Paul Reubens. All right. So we have this video here, The Untold Truth of Paul Reubens, from the Grunge channel. Shout out to them. Again, appreciate you guys coming over and watching. Shout out to all the good humans. Link is always in the description for those who are asking, man. We're going to see what they got to say about this. Rest in peace to this brother. So we ain't going to waste no more time. Let's jump right into it.
Paul Reubens entertained millions as Peewee Herman, but he could never leave the character completely behind, even in his personal life. For the star of Pee-wee's Playhouse, the line between character and actor was often blurry. Paul Reubens found his footing as a performer while a member of the Los Angeles-based improv troupe The Groundlings. One of the things that made him stand out from the rest of the crew was his ability to create characters, although not all have stood the test of time. Peewee, though, did stand the test of time. However, the character's birth wasn't an easy one. In Inside Pee-wee's Playhouse, the untold, unauthorized, and unpredictable story of a pop phenomenon, author Cassine Gaines revealed that Peewee was created with a little
Is that Fishburne?
inspiration from an aspiring teen comic who was a regular fixture at the Comedy Store. The Groundlings' artistic director Gary Austin told Reubens about meeting the teen, who gave his name as just Jeff. Jeff's whole routine consisted of cracking jokes about items he pulled out of a bag. Unfortunately for Jeff, he was really bad at it. After Austin pitched him as a basis for a character, Reubens added a now distinctive voice and reimagined the idea of using props. The finishing touch, a suit that didn't quite fit, was also Austin's idea, and the character was perfected on stage over the course of the next year.
Just a few short years ago, I was a nobody,
There's an oft-told tale about just how the bizarre concept of the Peewee Herman show was developed. As Paul Reubens usually told it, it had been his idea, hatched on a flight from New York to California.
So I got this idea to put him in a playhouse and to,
I don't think I've ever heard him speak like his normal voice. Wow.
develop a show along the lines of the old kid shows in the 50s.
He always credited his parents with giving him the money he needed to put the whole thing together, and in 1981, the stage show debuted at the Groundlings Theater, before later moving to the Roxy Theater in Hollywood. The show was the first major appearance of Reubens' oddball character, but according to what others revealed in Cassine Gaines's Inside Pee-wee's Playhouse, that might not be entirely true. Another version of the story comes from a television producer named Donna Kaufman. At the time Paul Reubens was creating his characters and finding his voice with the Groundlings, Kaufman was producing an SNL-style competitor and looking for the next great idea. She explained, "If you want to be edgy, you've got to be a little clever, so I thought it would be wise to come up with a late-night show that couldn't be touched by the censors." Soon enough, pieces started to fall into place. The show would have an old-school variety show feel, plenty of innuendo, and a playhouse idea. When Kaufman was introduced to Reubens, she said that she instantly knew that she had her host. As the show went on and ultimately wrapped, Kaufman said that she was pushed so far out of it that she'd considered suing Reubens.
Man.
By then, though, he was simply too big a star.
Brother looked like, what's his name? Deuce Bigelow, Rob Schneider?
Considered suing Reubens. By then, though, he was simply too big a star. In 2016, the New York Times got a face-to-face interview with Paul Reubens. The idea was that they were going to talk about his upcoming Pee-wee's Big Holiday, but as part of the interview, the journalist asked Reubens to meet in a place that was important to him on a personal level. The place he picked sort of makes one wonder where Reubens ends and Pee-wee begins. They met at Walgreens' flagship store. For Reubens, it was heaven on earth and a little bit his dream home. He explained, "There are apartments upstairs. Wouldn't it be amazing to live here? You'd never have to leave." Following him around and through the store was a fascinating insight into his character. He was drawn to the as seen on TV section of products and shared one of his must-have store items, a packet of something called Wound Seal. In the interview, Reubens revealed it was one of his mother's go-to first aid products. Ahead of a 2007 interview, the New York Times observed that Paul Reubens rarely had sit-down conversations with anyone. That, it turns out, was done by design. Bob Plunkett is a columnist for Sarasota magazine, and he's known Reubens' mother, Judy Rubenfeld, for a long time. But even with that family connection, Plunkett wrote that getting an interview with Reubens just wasn't the sort of thing that happened, as he and his manager decided that the only face that got publicity was that of Peewee Herman. Plunkett wrote, "No interviews with Paul were ever allowed, no photos of him were available, no allusions to him were permitted. The hometown boy makes good story I kept wanting to do was always squashed, and with what I considered a very heavy hand." He added that he wasn't just told no, he was told that unless he dropped the matter entirely, they weren't going to allow any Peewee-related material to be published either. That actually had some bizarre consequences. Even though Peewee Herman wore relatively little makeup and had no disguise, his appearance was different enough that Reubens could go out into public without being recognized. In fact, Deseret News says that one of the very first times that Reubens was connected to his alter ego in a very public way was with the publication of his notorious 1991 mugshot. On July 26, 1991, Reubens was arrested for exposing himself while in an X-rated theater, which quickly turned
that's the incident that I know about.
Into one of the biggest scandals of the year. Even though many supported him, the idea of the host of a children's television program being arrested on those charges was just not going to go away. Reubens pretty much disappeared for a while, and in 2020 he spoke about the scandal in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter. He'd already officially quit Pee-wee's Playhouse when the scandal broke and said he didn't feel it destroyed him. He told the outlet, "When people go like, 'Was your career over in 90, 91? I never viewed it like that. I make the rules of when I'm coming back and when I'm not coming back and what I do next.'" A few years prior, though, he also told the New York Times that although he tried not to dwell on it, he did regret how he handled it. Reubens said, "If I had to do it over again, I would figure out a way to get out there, talk about it, take control of it." Reubens did have a lot of support at the time, including from members of the police department who arrested him. When he needed to post bail, he was $40 short, and one of the officers gave it to him. A few months after Paul Reubens was arrested in a Sarasota adult theater, Rolling Stone did a deep dive analysis of the incident, why it happened, and what the consequences might be. They also revealed that it wasn't the first or even the second time he'd been arrested. The first was in 1971, when he ran afoul of the same Sarasota police force and was arrested for marijuana possession. The offense earned Reubens 2 years probation. There was another arrest, though, that could have been much more damaging. Peewee Herman was just starting to hit the stratosphere when
he looks so different. The hair.
Reubens was again visiting his parents in Sarasota. It was 1983, and he was arrested for loitering and prowling around what was then called the Adult Entertainment Center. The charges were ultimately dropped, but it could have derailed Peewee before he really got started.
Well, this is my playhouse. It stars me, Peewee Herman.
Part of Peewee Herman's appeal is his sort of eternal, childlike surrealness. So when Paul Reubens decided to bring him back to the screen in 2016's Pee-wee's Big Holiday, he was concerned he had aged out of the role. When he spoke with the New York Times, he said that he'd had a really hard time seeing himself on screen, telling the outlet, "It's a buzzkill. I'm not as limber as I was. I'm not as skinny. I don't have that energy. I don't have that body." Reubens then added that when he originally began pitching the movie to get someone on board, he suggested having Michael Cera step into Pee-wee's shoes. That, of course, didn't happen. But what did happen was digital de-aging. In a conversation with The Hollywood Reporter, he said that he was impressed that the new technology allowed him to play Peewee for 10 more years if he wanted to. He'd even had some ideas for future movies and held out hope that the character's enduring popularity would result in more films. By 2020, Reubens had apparently backed away from the idea of having anyone else play his famous alter ego. In an interview with Outclick, he was asked if he was ever planning on passing on the bow tie, and he said absolutely not. Interestingly, he did have one person he'd consider. Reubens told the outlet, "I've always liked the work of Christopher Walken." While Paul Reubens inhabited the character of Peewee Herman so completely that it might seem like it was the most natural thing in the world.
Oh, that's right, the dance. They even made a song, like it was a hip-hop Peewee Herman song. Wow.
Sarasota magazine found out otherwise when they spoke to some of his longtime friends. Stephanie Moss explained he loved Peewee, but he wanted out. And he'd apparently wanted out for a good long time, saying he felt trapped while playing the character. In his interview with Outclick, he also explained that there were even times when the line between actor and character got very blurry, saying, Sometimes it can be confusing having an alter ego. For example, when I'm at the supermarket, am I shopping for myself or Pee Wee Herman? If I'm at the mall and I see a nice pair of slacks, is it me or Pee Wee that's admiring them?
I don't know why they still love me, but you know, I mean, you could have worse problems, right?
Being Pee Wee Herman may have seemed like a ton of fun, but for Paul Reubens, it was serious work. He oversaw everything that revolved around the characters, so it's not entirely surprising that the iconic props of Pee Wee's Playhouse meant a lot to him. So much, in fact, that in his final days, he filed a lawsuit to try to get them back. As Yahoo reported, Reubens sued the Commissar Collection for keeping and then selling some props, including Mr. Window. Reubens said that he had originally handed the props over with the understanding that the company was going to facilitate getting them into the Museum of Television, but when he found out that the museum doesn't exist, he tried and failed to get them back. His legal team says that the missing props are worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million, but those aren't the only ones that were important to Reubens. In an interview with the New York Times, he talked about how in between shooting, he always loved to go hit local thrift stores. Among his favorite finds were knockoff and handmade Pee Wee Herman merch, which he always bought because he loved seeing just how much fans loved what he was doing. There's no denying that Pee Wee Herman shaped a lot of childhoods, but at the end of the day, what was Paul Reubens most proud of? The answer is kind of surprising, and he talked about it in an interview with the New York Times. He said that he was most proud of embracing attitudes outside of the mainstream and depicting people, relationships, and attitudes that weren't necessarily embraced anywhere else.
I'm a loner, Daddy. A rebel.
He also added that he was very proud of casting actors of color at a time when multiracial casts weren't necessarily ordinary. Reubens explained, "The king of cartoons was black, not just anybody, the king." That came out of growing up in Florida under segregation. I felt really good about that. While Reubens was making sure diversity featured heavily in the casting on screen, Pee Wee was making some major statements too. He befriended characters that were originally terrifying, went on pretend dates with other male characters, and even married a fruit salad simply because he loved it.
Do you? Do you?
I do.
As Reubens explained to the New York Times, that spoke to a lot of people. He went on to say that some of the most meaningful comments he got were from children who had felt like being unique was a bad thing, until Pee Wee told them it wasn't bad at all.
I guess I don't remember the show as well as I thought I did. I do not remember Fishburne being on there. But you know, when people pass away and you look back at their career or just things that they done, always talk about like the legacy that you leave behind, right? That's what I like about watching these grunge videos, because like they do a lot of research, and I mean, it's stuff I could probably try to find out myself, but just listening to the way that they narrate the videos and put the clips together, man. Hey, I'm looking at this show and I'm like, boy, because I do remember watching, but I guess not as good. Like, when did Fishburne, was this I'm trying to remember, was this I don't remember what channel it came on, what time it came on, none of that. I know he had like a movie too, right? Or 2 or 3. Rest in peace to the brother. Like I said, I know people had sent me messages. Boy, y'all be on top of it, I swear. A lot of times my wife be letting me know, but most of the times, like, I be editing, so I'm not even looking at any news or nothing. I be editing, so when the news break, I'll be like, oh. Or when I like finally finish editing and I see my phone, I'll be seeing stuff pop up. I'll be like, oh man. But hey, appreciate y'all coming over and watching, man. Again, rest in peace to Paul Reubens, Pee Wee Herman, man. All right, peace out.